So when we think about the hamstrings, we often think of these as being tight and stiff and often need to be stretched to get more flexible. But developing adequate strength and endurance in the hamstring is also a really critical focus and a really common fault that you're going to see with knee pain, hip pain, even with lower back pain. So here we're just going to go over a basic hamstring bridge progression in order to focus on building more strength and endurance into this critical hamstring group. So our most basic progression is just going to be a basic bilateral hamstring bridge. So what we're going to do is just get on our back, and we want our heels resting up on a bench or a chair or a box in front of us. And it's not absolutely critical we get this exact, but we want the knees bent somewhere in and around 90 degrees or so. Now from this position, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to pull my heels down like this into the box. I want to really work on pulling down the heels as if I'm trying to bend through the knee to really get some tension and some activation through this hamstring group. And if I push hard enough, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to be able to lift my hips off the floor. And again, we just want to lift up maybe a fist or two underneath our hips here. And as I'm doing this, I'm really trying to hook and pull with my heels to really get some tension and activation through those hamstring muscles. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drive this tension, this contraction through the hamstrings. I'm going to hold this for 8 to 10 seconds. And then I'm just going to go slowly down towards the floor. And then I can just rest my hips onto that floor again. Rest for a moment. Again, I'm going to really pull with those hamstrings, pull those heels in towards the box. I'm going to lift up. At the top of the motion, I'm going to really keep pulling with those heels. Really try to get that tension into those hamstring muscles. Again, holding for 8 to 10 seconds. Slowly down towards the floor. And again, I'm going to simply keep performing it just like this, pulling those heels down and lifting up. Again, holding 8 to 10 seconds, slowly down. Again, these are strength and endurance exercises. So the goal here is we're trying to fatigue the muscles. So what we'll typically do is repetitions to fatigue. And we're really trying to, again, activate those hamstring muscles, but really keep the high quality of the exercise. Okay, so in this next progression of our hamstring bridge track, what we're going to do is increase the amount of load and intensity of contraction through our hamstring group by shifting onto one leg at the top of the motion. So we're going to call these single leg isometric shifts. Let's take a look at how to do it. So again, I'm going to get into my basic hamstring bridge position, resting on the floor, knees bent, heels on the box or bench in front of me. And just like we saw with our basic hamstring exercise, we're going to really try to pull down with our heels and we're going to lift our hips up, really trying to focus that tension and contraction into that hamstring group itself. Now at the top of the motion, what I'm going to do is slowly lift one leg so that my weight starts to shift over onto the single leg. Again, this is increasing the amount of demand. Now, instead of the weight being distributed between two legs, it's 100% through that single leg. And I'm going to really feel this extra tension and demand on through this hamstring muscle. Again, strength and endurance focus. I'm going to try to hold this for 8 to 10 seconds. Now, after that 8 to 10 seconds, other heel slowly goes back down. So it's going to be resting on that bench. Now I've got weight on both legs, slowly down towards the floor. There's my first repetition. And again, I'm simply going to repeat this to fatigue. So again, pulling down with the heels, lifting up, slowly shifting that weight over, holding for that 8 to 10 seconds. Bilateral support, slowly back down. Now, just one quick side note here. With this, what we're doing is we're basically going from weight distributed from a 50% on each leg to 100% on each leg. And if we find that that's a bit too drastic of a progression, if when we're trying to shift to that one leg, there's any discomfort or it's hard to kind of hold that position, we don't have control over it, it's putting a lot of strain on the system, we can also do what we call partial shifts. So what I mean by that is, again, we can go up into our bilateral bridge position, and instead of shifting all of our weight, so it's 0% to 100%, we can slowly shift over. So for example, if I'm 50-50, I can start to slowly lift, in this case, my left leg, and I'm going to start to feel where the weight starts to shift. But instead of an all or none, I can go from a 50-50 to maybe a 40-60, 30-70, and that way we still have some support on our opposite leg, but it allows us to increase the intensity onto that single leg, and we can use this as a progression to build up to that ability to do full leg support. All right, so our next progression in our hamstring bridge track is going to be an eccentric hamstring bridge. So let's take a look. So again, we're going to start from our basic bridge position. First part is the same as the other exercises so far. We're going to really start to pull those heels down, get those hamstring muscles engaged, slowly lift up to lift that hip off the ground, 1 to 2 fists off the floor. Now from this position, I'm again going to slowly shift my weight onto one leg. Again, being conscious to keep the tension right in that hamstring and keep my body nice and stable. Now from here, instead of just holding, I'm going to slowly lower back down to the floor, just on the one leg. As I get to the bottom, I'm going to rest my back and my hips on the floor. Other leg goes back. We're going up on 2, shift the weight, accept the weight, nice and stable, slowly down to the floor. Again, lifting up, slowly shift, accept that weight, feel that tension in the hamstring, slowly lowering down to the floor. Nice and controlled. Again, strength and endurance focus. So we're typically going to do repetitions to fatigue, or as instructed by your clinician or therapist. Okay, so final exercise in our all right, so our final progression in our hamstring bridge track is going to be our single leg hamstring bridge. So here we're building off the strength and endurance and really all the principles that we've built up to this point with doing the bridge, but this is going to simply shift to a completely one leg execution to really increase the stress and demand and therefore the exercise stimulus onto that hamstring group. So again, same beginning position, we're on our back, knees bent, heels up on a bench or chair in front of us. And from here, from this resting position, I'm simply going to lift one leg off of the box, so I'm completely single leg support here. Again, I'm going to really try to pull and drive that heel down into the box. Feel that hamstring muscle tense. And from here, I'm simply lifting up on the one leg. Again, really trying to drive that contraction through the hamstring. Keep that heel pulling down. 1 to 2 fists with your lower back off the floor. Hold for a couple seconds. Slowly back down. Hips and back get back to the floor. And again, strength and endurance focus. Typically, we're going to do repetitions to fatigue or as instructed by your clinician or therapist.